A 7-year-old in Norway sits by a campfire, carving a stick with a real knife. Sharp blade, small hands, no safety scissors, no plastic. His father stands a few feet away. Close enough to help. Far enough to let the child figure it out alone. In parts of the United States, that alone could get Child Protective Services called. But in Norway, this is just a normal afternoon. Researchers at Queen Maud University have spent years studying children who are allowed to take physical risks like climbing higher than feels comfortable, playing with real tools, or walking to school without an adult. And what they found wasn't more injuries. It was less anxiety, more confidence, children who could actually judge danger instead of just fearing it. And to be clear, this isn't about putting children in danger. It's about how children learn to handle risk in the first place. So what actually makes Norwegian children so confident? If you said it's because they descend from Vikings, you're close. But no, the real answer comes down to 3 principles. 2 of them, any parent, anywhere, can use. The third one is different. It's harder to recreate, not because the philosophy is complicated, but because it depends on something most Western countries simply don't have. What is it? We'll get there. But first, the 2 principles that actually are within your reach. The first principle is about that 2-second decision itself. What's actually happening in a parent's head in the moment they decide whether to step in a Norwegian playground. A child climbs higher than most parents would allow. A father nearby doesn't move. 10 feet away, another child picks up a rusted piece of metal from the ground. The same father is there in 2 seconds. Same parent, 2 completely different reactions. That's risky play, the term researchers at Queen Maud University use for exactly this. Sansider identified 6 categories of risk that children are naturally drawn to: height, speed, dangerous tools. Dangerous elements, like fire and water. Rough play, and disappearing unsupervised exploration. Not all risk is equal, and that's the entire point. Norwegian parents make a fast, mostly intuitive judgment. Risk that builds capability climbing, a knife used correctly, a controlled fire is allowed to run its course. Risk with no learning value, rusted metal, a genuine unknown gets immediate intervention. The skill isn't permissiveness, it's judgment. In the West, risk is often treated as one category, dangerous, therefore prevented. Norway treats risk as a spectrum. And the parent's job is to read, moment to moment, which kind they're looking at. Now, I want to be honest about something here. Sansider's research has been influential in shaping how Norway, and increasingly other countries, think about childhood risk, but it isn't uncontested. Sample sizes in several of her studies are relatively small, and critics point out that the correlation between risky play and later anxiety regulation doesn't prove the risk itself is the cause. Other environmental factors might be doing some of that work too. That nuance matters more than a clean answer would. Here's the distinction made visible. Climbing high is allowed, rusted metal is not. The difference isn't bravery versus fear. It's whether the risk teaches the child something they couldn't learn another way. So here's the practice. In the moment, ask yourself one question. Is my child learning something they need here? Or am I only preventing my own discomfort? That question is the whole skill. Risky play is one decision a parent makes, in seconds, in a single moment. But Norwegian parents aren't just good at handling risky moments. They've built an entire philosophy around discomfort, and it shows up somewhere far less dramatic than a knife by a campfire. It shows up every single evening, in the rain, 6 in the evening, raining. A Norwegian mother is tired. Her daughter doesn't want to put her boots on. Neither of them feels like going outside. They go anyway, not joyfully, just because that's what happens at 6 in the evening, rain or not. That's Friluftsliv, outdoor life. Literally, free air life. Not a hobby, not a good weather activity, a near obligation that exists independent of how anyone feels about it that day. And here's the thing. The credibility of Friluftsliv isn't that Norwegians love nature. It's that they go regardless of love, mood, or weather. That consistency builds a child's tolerance for discomfort, not the nature itself, the repeated experience of doing something uncomfortable because it's simply what you do. In the West, outdoor time is often the first thing cut when it's inconvenient. Bad weather, low energy, a busy schedule. Norway treats it the opposite way. The more inconvenient it feels, the more it might be doing. Research on nature, exposure, and stress regulation, including work from Francis Kuo at the University of Illinois, shows that time outdoors, even in unpleasant conditions, measurably lowers cortisol and improves attention. The discomfort of the weather may not be incidental to the benefit. It may be part of it, and I'll say this honestly, this one is hard to do consistently. It asks something of the parent's own mood, not just the child's. That's exactly what makes it credible rather than decorative. So here's the practice. Before deciding to stay in because of weather or mood, ask yourself, am I protecting my child from genuine harm? Or just from my own discomfort about going out? The first two principles you can use anywhere, wherever you live, whatever your country looks like. Now, you might be thinking something right now. Sure, this works in Norway. But Norway isn't America. Norway isn't where I live. And you're right. So why do Norwegian parents allow their kids more freedom and responsibility at a younger age than almost anywhere else in the West? What is it about Norway that makes it completely normal for a 10-year-old to ride a bus alone, or for kids to use real knives and build their own campfires? It's because of something most countries lack: trust, not in a naive sense. As a cultural concept, in Norway it's called Tillit, a reasonable, statistically grounded expectation that most people, most institutions, and most situations are not dangerous by default. And here's the thing. In Norway, a child wandering alone isn't invisible. Adults nearby are still watching, in a quiet, communal way. A neighbor notices, a shopkeeper keeps half an eye out, but nobody assumes the worst about the parent. The watching isn't suspicion, it's shared responsibility without judgment attached. In much of America, that same scene carries a different weight. A stranger might intervene, not just to help, but to assess whether the parent is failing. A neighbor might report it. The parent isn't just managing their child's safety, they're managing how their parenting looks to everyone watching. That's not paranoia. That's a rational response to a culture with higher crime, less institutional trust, and a much lower threshold for what counts as neglect. Cross-national research on social trust consistently ranks Norway among the highest trust societies measured anywhere in the world. That trust correlates with lower anxiety and parenting behavior across multiple studies. Though, as with Sandsider's work, correlation isn't proof of direct cause. So if you live somewhere with a higher crime rate, less social trust, more genuine unpredictability, your caution isn't a flaw. It's you accurately reading your own environment. Risky play doesn't have to mean a knife by a campfire in the woods. It can mean climbing in your own back garden, where you can see them. Friluftsliv doesn't require Norwegian forests. It just requires going outside, on a day you'd rather skip. So what actually makes Norwegian children so brave? Apart from descending from Vikings, 3 things that work together. The judgment to know which risks are worth it. The tolerance to stay with discomfort when it isn't dangerous. And a society that makes both of those feel less like a gamble. 2 of those you can build anywhere. The third one you now understand, and knowing why it's harder elsewhere is already half the work. So here's what this looks like in practice. 1 thinking frame, 3 different moments. When your child wants to try something a little risky, ask, is this teaching them something they need, or is this just risk with no learning value? In bad weather, when you don't feel like going outside, ask, am I protecting my child or my own comfort? And when you're deciding how much independence to allow, ask, am I responding to actual danger or to a fear that was shaped by something other than this moment? Risky play, Friluftsliv. Tillit, judgment, discomfort. Trust. Norway didn't solve childhood fear. They just decided which fears were worth keeping. If this video helped you understand why raising brave kids looks different depending on where you live, share it with a parent who needs to hear it. And if you want more on how the world's most resilient children are raised, subscribe. There's a lot more coming.